Welcome in, everybody, to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast powered by Full-Time Fantasy and the FFWC. I am your co-host, Billy Musio, and my co-host, Jody Smith, is with me tonight. And we're going to be running through the rookie reviews, first impressions through mini camps and camps. How are these rookies doing in the early stages of their NFL career? What is the word on the street? But before we do that, I have not seen Jody in a while. Jody, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, doing okay, man. Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks. I know you were off at FSGA. So how'd that go? And what did you learn in your first experience there? But was it your first?
It was my first experience at the FSGA. I learned not to fly right now because it's just I can't fly commercially outside, like myself personally, in renting a plane, just because I can't fly VFR or IFR. I'm only VFR, and so I was stuck in Seattle for like 10 hours. I sat there and just drank, a couple bottles of wine inside the Centurion Lounge, and then started moving on to vodka tonics. I was able to get a red eye flight over to Detroit, and then next thing you know, like I fall asleep on the plane, wake up, I'm in Detroit at 6:30 in the morning, and had a couple hours of sleep. After that, woke up and went off to the expert draft, and then after that we started doing just the cocktail hours and commingling and getting to meet people and the
Cocktail
networking.
hour. That's just what you needed, huh? After that start.
Yeah. So the networking piece is just phenomenal. It's nice to meet people in person and not just see a Twitter name, and to be able to touch base with them and get those business connections. Like, that's the beauty about the FSGA. I got to learn a lot about the regulation side of the business for the FFWC and compliance and all the legal jargon, which was something that's kind of been outside my normal comfort zone. But being able to learn about that, it was kind of eye-opening as well. So definitely a fun experience. Got to meet a lot of cool people. Got to talk with Andy Behrens for a couple hours at a bar one night. Had a few tequila shots with Brad Evans and got to bump elbows with a couple different people. So it was a really good experience. I really enjoyed it. I mean, the flights there and back sucked, but outside the travel, the experience of the FSGA was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it.
Yep. And I'd recommend anyone that's in this writing, if you're into writing, podcasting, even if you're just starting, if it's something you're interested in, you should definitely at least once take the opportunity to do that. Invest in yourself. Go on up there, and it's a great chance to meet these people, because we form these relationships and friendships with people. We become really close at a lot of times, and it's just really rare to be able to get together and meet people that you normally. And most of the time, people are exactly who you think they are, and you get along just as well as you could. And coming up here in August, if you have the opportunity, we'll have one that's a little less hectic. It's more. I think it's more fun based. But the expo coming up with Bob Long and here in August 12th through 14th. In Ohio, I think that would be a really wonderful opportunity for anyone that's interested in coming to meet us, or anyone in this space. It sounds like it's going to be a really, really good time. And Billy, obviously, I'm looking forward to manning the full-time fantasy booth with you.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I know we're gonna be both bringing a couple flasks, maybe have a bottle of whiskey back there with us, because we're gonna have a mock draft world championship up. So anyone who's attending that, you will get a one free entry into the mock draft world championship, where you can choose from a variety of different prizes, including a world championship entry valued at $1,800. There's also going to be an all-inclusive draft package in that's going to take you out to Vegas. So there's lots of prizes that are going to be available in that free entry at the table. So if you're going to be there, swing by, get your phone out, make sure you have it on you, scan the little doohickey, and get your free entry into the mock draft world championship. But I'm just going to let people know that we are live now on Twitter. We're talking rookie reviews, first impressions through camp. And who do we have first? I think you want to start it off. Well, I guess Breece Hall's mine. So let's start it off with Breece Hall. Not a lot of news on Breece Hall out of camp so far, but no news is good news. But all we're hearing right now is that he's had a nice rookie mini camp with several big runs. He's already earning the trust of the coaches. He's looked explosive in camp. He's had his normal agility. We're expecting him to be a big part of this offense. Outside that, though, not a lot of news on Breece Hall. Currently going off the board as pick number 43 in the FFWC, running back 19 off the board. I think that we all know Breece Hall was 99% of people's consensus 101. No news is good news. Not a lot of negative press, or any negative press, I should say, outside the box from Breece Hall. I would fully expect to hear more as we get the pads on and we get more into camp and we start getting hits. But what's your first impressions of Breece Hall?
Yeah, we were, like everyone else, we had him as a 101, and there's no reason at this point to have downgraded him. But as we know from last year, no news can be good news, because if you'll remember when Travis Etienne last year he was pretty much considered the 101 or 102, definitely the top running back last year, and what happened is he never got to play. So I think Hall is going to be in a good position to succeed right away. I think we all were happy, I think, with the way that the Jets offense worked last year, with the exception of their quarterback, and that's going to be the key for them. I like the pieces they've had. We're going to talk a little bit later about one of the receivers, but they've got some really, really interesting weapons there. And we just need Zach Wilson to take, a really huge step forward. And the biggest thing that he can do for all of us and, for himself and for the Jets to succeed is to, is work on accuracy. I want to say he was the lowest the least accurate quarterback last year, or he was he was the bottom 2 or 3. He was down there pretty low. So, and unfortunately, unlike with Josh Allen, that's not something we see improve a lot. So, but hopefully something can happen. Jets staff can get him under wraps and can figure that out. But for now, I don't see any reason to come off of Hall as the 101 of any rookie draft. He's head and shoulders the top running back, and there's, like you said, no news, good news.
So running back 19 off the board, that puts him in the same range, slightly behind. Travis Etienne is actually starting to climb up boards.
He is.
Yeah, he's climbing up boards. But so let's just talk a couple running backs here, like Ezekiel Elliott, running back 18, Breece Hall, running back 19. Right. Then you have running back 20, David Montgomery, Antonio Gibson, running back 21. Do you think that's the right range for Breece Hall coming in as a rookie into this Jets offense, or are there a couple names here that you would prefer over him?
We're all kind of anticipating, because he was a pretty smooth pass catcher. We're anticipating that's going to kind of hold court, and he needs that kind of volume to stay in that range. And it's kind of interesting because Carter, he was okay in that role last year. So it just depends. I'm real high on AJ Dillon. So I'm looking at our full-time fantasy projections. We have Hall one step above Dillon right now, which sounds about right, to be honest. But given the choice between the two, if it was the late 4, early 5th round, somewhere in there, and I'm somehow with they're both on the board, I kind of would like to have I'd like to split my shares of them, because, like I said, I'm big on Dillon, but the potential for all the speed that he's displayed, and the 3-down ability that he offers, I'm really interested. I think his evaluation is about right now.
Okay, perfect. Why don't you? What's happened to Chris Olave?
Well, here's the thing with Olave. He's been one of the fast risers. I would want to say it in rookie camp, and the main reasoning for that is, if you're paying attention, is the absence of Michael Thomas, because this is getting a little scary, because last time we heard Michael Thomas was heading in the right direction, but that was he's essentially been out for like 2 years with this mysterious ankle injury. It's really troubling that we were getting this positive news, and it was, supposedly a relatively minor injury. If you'll remember, last year at this time, we fully anticipated Michael Thomas was going to be healthy and was going to come back. And a lot of us, got burned by selecting him as our wide receiver too, just because it was just considered, a relatively minor injury or something that was easily recoverable. And it's really, really troubling that, we have no positive news. He's not taking the field, and it's just worrisome. And then, he had a setback, and we just haven't had really any reports. Going along with the Saints, they signed Jarvis Landry. I think Landry's fine, but his production has been on decline for 3 years. He's going to turn 30 this year, and what Landry's going to do is he's going to man the slot, which he's done 60% of his snaps last year came out of the slot. And Olave, he offers a little bit of slot ability, so I think they'll move him around. But my estimation is that Thomas is going to be the Saints' number one receiver. I project them that he's going to lead them in targets. He's probably going to lead them in receptions and yards. My biggest issue with the Saints offense right now is Jameis Winston. We've talked numerous times about how I won't say I despise Jameis Winston. I just don't think that Winston is a quarterback I want anything to do with. The one positive that I'll say about Winston is that last year he had a career high 8.2 adjusted yards per attempt. That should bode well for Olave's 4.39 speed, because I don't anticipate him running a lot of too many short routes with Jarvis Landry in the field, and that's something that Michael Thomas has actually excelled at in the past too. So I think that Olave really has a great opportunity to develop into their number one, and him with the FFWC ADP, where is he? He's down at 87 overall, wide receiver 45. I like the upside there, because you're getting basically what I anticipate is going to be a team number one receiver down there, 45 receivers deep. So I think he deservedly has moved up quite a bit on rookie wish lists.
And so Catherine Terrell of The Athletic, who's the reporter for the Saints over there, has gone on Twitter and said that Jameis Winston's quote on Chris Olave, he's smooth as the other side of the pillow. He's real smooth. He can get in and out of breaks very well. He's electric and smart. Man, he's a guy that always asking questions. He's a guy that wants to know how you want it, and I really respect that. These are, sentiments that we have heard repeated from other players as well, that Olave is running crisp routes. I mean, he came out of college as one of the best route runners, him and Garrett Wilson. Olave is a very crisp route runner, and I think will do well in this system. Next up, speaking of the devil, Garrett Wilson. And news out of camp with Garrett Wilson is just nothing but positive, right? We're hearing veteran players like Braxton Berrios who's saying that he's just, everything he does is natural. He has raw athletic ability. 1,000% of the time he's out there. He's not a part of him that relies on anything outside of his athletic ability, that he's just out there working like anybody else. Corey Davis has gone and saying that the dude is just special. He's real special. We're hearing it from coaches. We're seeing in camp that he's climbing the ladder, making one-handed, freakish, athletic catches. If you recall, prior to camp, as we were approaching the draft, you and I had Garrett Wilson as our wide receiver ones. He was 2 in our rankings, only behind Breece Hall. Landing spot maybe adjusts him a little bit, but from a raw talent perspective, Garrett Wilson is, I think, hands down, the best talent in this draft class. When you talk about freakish ability, you look at someone like Jamar Chase last year, from someone who's just a freak athlete, and Garrett Wilson pops off the page to me like that. So it's nice to see him with positive camp news. It's good to see him progressing well in his early career. I'm excited to see him in his early career. Right now, over at the Player Profiler Championship, over at the FFWC, he is going as pick number 94, wide receiver 48 off the board. I mean, that's a lot of upside for somebody who has that much talent. And yes, there are concerns. It is the Jets. We do have those concerns, but this team seems to be trending in the right direction, right? They had a phenomenal draft, one of the best drafts I've seen in years, maybe over a decade, quite frankly. Addressing both sides of the ball and doing it adequately. I think the sky's pointing up for Garrett Wilson, and camp news seems to be repeating that as well.
If Zach Wilson could take that next step, and I'm not confident in it, but I'd like to see it happen, because Wilson and Elijah Moore, that's like a little mini version of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in Cincinnati. No, I'm not comparing them, but I'm saying it's an intriguing, really, really athletic pair of young wide receivers that, paired with an improving, like I said, we're assuming that Wilson takes this next step with a nice young quarterback. It makes the Jets, not to mention Breece Hall thrown in there, it makes the Jets potentially really, really interesting.
All right, next up we have Jamison Williams. What are we hearing out of camp with Jamison?
Not a lot because Jameson hasn't, been real active because, as we all know, he was injured in the college playoffs. So recovering from an ACL tear in January is going to keep him out for a while. And the thing is, prior to that injury, you could argue that Wilson was right up there as potentially this draft's number one receiver. When you look at what he did, last year at school, he was top 20 overall grade at Pro Football Focus. He was top 20 in route run percentage. He offered flexibility, running 28% of his snaps from the slot. That was 10th in the. He was 10th in the country with 143.0 quarterback rate when he was targeted. So we know he's an excellent playmaker. Fourth in the country, and what makes Wilson really, really intriguing is when he's fully healthy is what he did like after the catch. Because he was fourth in the country with 722 yards after catch. He was sixth in yards after catch per reception. He averaged a very healthy 14.5 ADOT, and he forced 12 missed tackles overall. So this is a guy that excelled with the ball in his hands. Unfortunately, Dan Campbell, came out pretty recently here and said that he's hopeful, quote unquote, hopeful, but he doesn't see Williams being able to be on the field this entire summer. So unfortunately, the best course of action right now, if you're in, if you're not in a dynasty league, if you're in redraft, is probably to go ahead and start downgrading him overall because it's starting to look more and more like he's a potential risk to miss. It wouldn't be a shock right now for me for them to obviously. The Lions, you're in a complete rebuild, right? You're trying to do things correctly. You're building from the trenches, and I think that they've been doing things correctly. So it kind of makes me feel like they're going to proceed with caution here. That he's not necessarily going to be rushed back, and there's not really a need for them to. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him start the season on the PUP list, which he could miss 4 games, he could miss 6 games, it could be even more. So still love him in Dynasty, but starting to be a little, wary of targeting him in redraft because, it's looking more likely than not that he's going to miss some pretty significant time.
Scott says you cited PFF. Time for you to chug a beer.
I'm working on
it. He's about to pound. Is that a hazy? It looked like a hazy.
It's a double IPA. It's not hazy though.
All right. So somebody says they need a Burks discussion. Trying to remain calm over here. Well, your wish is our command because Treylon Burks is the next on the list. According to, what was it?
Is that how convenient?
Yeah, how convenient. According to Vrabel, after sitting out OTAs, Burks has also missed a handful of practices during minicamp due to issues that we all know is stemming from asthma. The biggest concern at the moment is just the amount of reps that he's missing, right? This is valuable time that he can be building with his quarterback, valuable time with the offense, gaining that timing, that rhythm. So all that has been, missed time for Burks. He started slipping in drafts right now. His ADP has taken about a 2-round hit with the news inside of the FFWC. He's being selected right now as pick 77, wide receiver 42 off the board. Now, is this news, Jody, or is this just noise? How are you approaching this as a drafter? And, last year, Jamar Chase couldn't catch a football. Is Treylon Burks this year asthma the new noise, or is this something to be legitimately concerned about?
Well, tis the season to overreact. That's the way I'm kind of approaching things. We see this every summer when the NBA season winds down and hockey's gone. There's not a lot going on right now unless you're a baseball fan. So people are really, I think, overreacting maybe to kind of things. Asthma, it's nothing to scoff at, but it seems like it's something that people have been able to manage to okay in the past, and it hasn't been a real overall a real debilitating thing. And I haven't adjusted anything at all. Listen, Burks, Bill, you and I were in on Burks early. We really, really loved him. And as soon as that draft day trade happened, it was pretty funny that a lot of us thought that Burks at his best, his highest possible comp was A.J. Brown-esque sizable deep threat. And, lo and behold, that's exactly where he landed to replace a very sneaky move by the Titans overall. I haven't adjusted him at all. I feel pretty comfortable with him right around in the wide receiver 27 to 30 range. I felt like our projections for him were good, and I'm not overreacting to it. So if you can get him that late in drafts, I'm all over it.
So we initially had Burks as our wide receiver 2, our number 3 rookie player in this 2022 NFL draft. With this news, and we'll get to Drake London shortly, but does Drake London move up for you over Burks? I mean, no news is good news. Steps into a similar role, wide receiver 1 role in his offense, probably playing from behind this season. For me, I move Drake London now ahead of Burks. I'm even contemplating moving Olave ahead of Burks. I am concerned with the asthma because this is a lot of valuable reps. We're hearing out of camp, first impressions, when someone isn't on the field, what happens? They start building rapport with another player, and that player right now is Austin Hooper. So Tannehill and him have become, close in the passing game. He's looking to him early and often, we're looking and seeing that he is one of his favorite targets inside of camp. So if you have Treylon Burks, especially in Dynasty, where you probably took him with a top 2 pick, maybe top 3 pick, depending upon your league, I have to have some concerns. You redraft, if you haven't drafted yet, you're looking at him seeing, hey, I can capitalize on the discount. But if you have already selected him, you're starting to see him go 2 rounds later. Does that concern you at all, knowing that you can get him at a cheaper price? Or would you, so let's just say, for instance, you're on the clock. Drake London and Treylon Burks are both there. Who are you selecting today?
London. Okay. That really hasn't changed though much, because I think we kind of all once London went to Atlanta, and you automatically are pretty much locking in 120 targets minimum for that, assuming he stays healthy. So it feels like a little safer bet.
So listener says he'd rather, as long as Tannehill's back there throwing the ball, who cares? He'd rather take a Jets wide receiver. Ooh, that's saying something. We also have another comment. Folks are saying he's out of shape. This comment's about asthma related, or is he just really a tubby wide receiver? What do you think? Is it asthma related, being out of shape, or do you think that his conditioning is also a concern?
I guess it's not out of the realm of thinking that the coaches would want to kind of protect their prized rookie that they kind of invested a lot to trade for if he's really legitimately out of shape. But it feels like that would have somebody else on the sidelines, because as things get more open and you have more different levels of reporters and team personnel and things, it feels like that would have come out to somebody else. If it has, I haven't read that.
Okay. I know that we saw some concerns too with him and his routes. He was, losing his footing, missing steps, and breaking late or tripping up on his feet. It just seems to be a lot of negative press in relation to Treylon Burks right now, but rightfully so.
Remember when Jamar Chase couldn't catch?
Yep, Jamar Chase. So it's that time of the year, right, where they're reporting on anything and everything, right? It's just all any news is going to hit the street. We have to think from a worst case scenario. Let's just say that it is asthma. Let's just say that he does join late. Regardless, there's just too many vacated targets in Tennessee for him not to succeed. And we've said this time and time again. I'm going to say it so I'm blue in the face, but 336 targets, 64% of the available target shares available for grabs here. So once he is on the field, we expect him to be a focal point of this offense. They don't make a move like this without committing to him. So I would say, to ease your concerns, continue to draft Treylon Burks, take the discount, especially now, and capitalize on it come the rest of the season. So who do we have next? We talked about Jameson Williams, so let's talk about James Cook.
Yeah, James Cook. This is a little, concern for me, because we've seen him rise up really quickly. And Billy, what was our initial ranking of Cook? We had him at before the draft, pre-draft, we had him at 16 and rookie, and now he is firmly going in the top 10. And the latest we heard was GM Brandon Bean called Cook a sub back. he back who's just going to come in for series or maybe a pass catching back. And at a 5'11" and 190, he's not necessarily built to run between the tackles. He's not a guy who's going to be much of a short yardage option. Not that matters much, in Buffalo with Josh Allen taking all those shorties anyway. But there's some things to like with Cook. I don't want to mention particular analytics website, not to website, but he was the 17th graded receiving back in this class. A full 1/5 of his snaps in his final year of college were as either lined up in a slot or actually lined up out wide. So that he's shown a lot of versatility as a receiver. He was again the 144.3 quarterback rating when he was targeted as a receiver, that ranked 17th. And I saw a little nugget from this particular site today that mentioned that Cook had a 87.2 grade versus single coverage over the last 2 seasons, and that was tops among all running backs. But interesting tidbit on why I think Cook is probably being a little overrated, overdrafted is, well, first off, Billy, you and I were in agreement that we really like Devin Singletary. It's hard to find a back that ended, with the exception maybe of Rashad Penny, who was a better playoff contributor down the stretch. I think Singletary really kind of took off with that lead back role, and my hopeful expectation is that is a role that he holds on to. But the presence of Singletary and Josh Allen, who's going to be their main short yardage runner, that really caps James Cook's really potential to in the touchdown department, in my opinion. And then, again, Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros, good friend of all of ours. He had a really, really interesting nugget that he put out on Twitter. And he talked about Buffalo Bills running back target rates since Josh Allen has been there. They've ranked 19th, 26th, 29th, and 29th. So this is an offense that doesn't feature their running backs much in the receiving game. I know that Singletary had about 50, I think he had 50 receptions last year, somewhere in that range. But I don't know where the target's going to come from to be able to maintain all of these the mouths there in Buffalo. You've got Diggs, you've got Gabriel Davis, who everyone seems so smitten with. I think Jamison Crowder is an upgrade over Cole Beasley. Now you've got a second tight end in OJ Howard joining Dawson Knox. So I have a hard time coming up with enough touches and enough participation for Cooks to really pay off his ADP the way he's risen. Like he's ahead of guys like Melvin Gordon and Ramondre Stevenson. These are guys that I would would much prefer to target. But the thing is, we'll have to see some really interesting developments for him in camp coming up here. As of right now, I don't see any reason that Devin Singletary is not the back to get there. I just don't see enough touches for Cook personally. But hey, if he starts turning heads and looking amazing, in training camp, maybe we can reevaluate. I mean, what do you think?
No, I think Cook is being overdrafted. I do. News out of camp is positive, but they've come out and said that they drafted Cook because they weren't able to secure J.D. McKissick. They don't run J.D. McKissick like a 3-down back. J.D. McKissick is a satellite back. He's a third down specialist, and that's what James Cook is going to be. I mean, James Cook will sprinkle in. Don't get me wrong, but you hit the hammer on the nail when you talked about Devin Singletary. Weeks 14 through 18, he was running back 2 in the league in PPR leagues. That's it, running back 2, only behind Rashad Penny. You were dead accurate. He had 98 fantasy points. He was averaging 19.7 fantasy points per game during that stretch, that 5-game stretch. 375 rushing yards during that time, 14 receptions, and 6 touchdowns. So he did finally, he was being used. He broke out. I don't think that they just take that away from Singletary, especially with how explosive that offense looked down the stretch. I think the coaches know what they have. Don't get me wrong, Cook is talented. Cook is going to be involved, but to be drafted as running back 36 off the board right now, I think it's a little steep for the price. Now, we have seen him fall here and there in drafts, but I'm more comfortable taking him a little bit later.
Agreed.
Next on the list, we have Kenneth Walker. And so everyone knows that I am a Rashad Penny fan. So we're looking at this and saying, what's happening with Walker in camp? Well, we all know. So this is a report from Bob. Is it Candoda? I can never say that guy's name right. Is that who that? He's with Seattle Times. So Bob, we'll just call him Bob. Bob from Seattle Times says Seahawks rookie running back Ken Walker has been dealing with a hamstring injury. We've all heard that. Seattle's also notorious for being hard on their rookie running backs. I mean, we look back at Rashad Penny, who was selected in round 1. Hardly saw the field. Kenneth Walker here selected in round 2. We also just talked about how well Rashad Penny did down the stretch. He was the number 1 running back down the stretch from weeks 14 through 18. He averaged 22 fantasy points per game. Yes, he has injury concerns, which is where people are expecting Walker to take over. But that being said, that is an expensive price to draft a handcuff. That is an expensive price to draft a running back who has not been able to be on the field due to a hamstring injury. He's going off the board right now as pick 82, running back 29 off the boards right now. I just cannot get behind the Walker excitement. I mean, he was one of the best pure runners in this class, but landing spot alone, not to mention the early injury, missing valuable reps in camp, I can't get behind that cost. How about you?
No, I've agreed. I haven't been on Walker this whole offseason. Look, I can't figure out Seattle. This is one of them teams, like, we don't even know right now who's their quarterback going to be. We don't know who their running back's going to be. Not necessarily. Latest report looking at Roto-World says ESPN's Brady Henderson writes, Rashad Penny is in the driver's seat to be Seattle's primary back. And Billy, as guys that we've been drafting for months now, I know both of us have got a lot of Rashad Penny, so that's great news. But you had a key point there in how Seattle tends to slowly bring along their rookie running backs, and that's not necessarily great news for Walker. But another thing is what's going to happen. It's not like with Russell Wilson, the Seahawks were throwing a ton of passes to the running backs over the years. They tended to get the ball into the hands of their wide receivers and kind of look at their tight ends a little bit in the red zone. So, it's kind of hard to anticipate what's going to happen with Seattle right now. But with a 5.5 is their over-unders, you're talking about a team that's, what about game script wise? I mean, unless Ken Walker is coming in right away and commanding a lot of targets, which he could, but he might not as well. But unless he's taking on that kind of role, with a healthy Rashad Penny, it's hard, really, really difficult for me to anticipate him earning enough touches to pay off that ADP. It's something that I've been avoiding it, big time. I liked Walker overall coming out of school. Just that right now it feels like he's just one of the more overpaid rookies, and it's just not someone who's I'm ever able to pull the trigger on simply because he goes at least a couple rounds higher than I would start wanting to kind of look at him.
Okay. All 100% agree with you there. Next on the list, we have Sky Moore. What's happened with Sky Moore? Again, another candidate possibly being overdrafted. But what's your thoughts here?
Yeah. It's probably, I agree. It's another team, in a different realm. I don't know what to think of Kansas City right now. Overall, unlike Seattle, who I'm a little more hesitant, clearly to target too many Seahawks. So you're talking about a team that basically is in the midst of a rebuild. The Chiefs are going to be just fine. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, they'll figure out a way to make this work. But it sounds like the current plan is for them to take all those targets that were getting funneled to Tyreek Hill and just kind of spread them out evenly between MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster and Sky Moore, who, has looked good. He's explosive. He's the kind of guy that he's got the credentials to come in and be, a big time contributor right away. He was tied with, Drake London and fourth overall receiver grade from Pro Football Focus. Sorry, Scott. He has inside-outside versatility, which will fit well with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid offense. He led the nation in missed tackles forced. He had a tremendous combine. He really, really some of the draft experts were coming out right away and saying he ain't making it out of the second round. And, They were spot on. I just don't know what to make right now out of Kansas City's offense, and we don't. We also have McCall Hardman, who has the experience in that system. Really, I feel pretty comfortable that Juju Smith-Schuster, who's a guy I've always liked, I feels like he's probably going to lead the team in targets, but really it could be Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who offers that deep speed that Hill did. It could be McCall Hardman, who is inherited in the system.
Yeah, there's just so much going on inside of Kansas City right now. I mean, again, everyone knows I'm a vacated target guy. I'm going to say it. Kansas City has the most vacated targets, but they also have the most turnover at the wide receiver position. They went out and got MVS. They have Juju Smith-Schuster. They still have McCole Hardman. They still have Travis Kelce. Where does Sky Moore fit into this, right? He's being drafted right now at FFWC at pick 98, wide receiver 50 off the board, right? 13th rookie off the board. So
right now, I mean, look, to be honest, you could make a case for Sky Moore being Kansas City's number one receiver, which,
or the fourth,
or he could be their wide receiver 4. Exactly. And that's why there's enough risk reward with where he is. And there's other guys in that range of the draft that are a little bit safer. So I guess it just depends on your personal draft strategy. Where's he going overall? I had that
going to pick 98. So he's
98.
going.
Okay. So you're talking 9th, 8th, 9th, 10th round in that range. It's hard for me to anticipate so many teams that have felt like they got their starting lineup aced at that point, and they feel like, okay, I can start taking some shots now. That's why I'm a little hesitant. But like I said, overall, I still like him as a prospect. I still like him as a fit there. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, actually, it would surprise me if he was able to out target Juju Smith-Schuster at minimum. But if you're excited about him, if you're big on him, then if he's their wide receiver 2, then he can be a usable fantasy option clearly this year. But until we have a little more clarity with him, I prefer to approach with more caution.
Okay, I want to do a couple rapid fires, and I want you to pick Allen Lazard or Sky Moore.
Lazard, I feel like he's probably going to be Green Bay's number one receiver. He has a pretty good red zone rapport with Aaron Rodgers. So it feels like to me, Lazard is still a sneaky pick to score 10 touchdowns.
Rashad Penny or Sky Moore?
That's Rashad Penny. Come on, man.
Okay. TJ Hawkins? TJ Hawkinson or Sky Moore?
That's a little more difficult, but I feel like Hawkinson is a really, really good player at a position that lacks top depth. So I probably would lean Hawkinson there.
Okay. Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore?
Ooh. I'm going to lean towards Toney with the upside.
Okay. Joe Burrow or Sky Moore?
So the QB 8 or wide receiver, at that point, round 8 or 9, that's about the range I start looking at my quarterback. So I'm going to go Burrow.
Okay, I'm going to do 2 more. Okay, Kyler Murray or Joe Burrow. I mean, Kyler Murray or Sky Moore?
Murray. I love Murray.
Okay, now this is where it starts to get interesting. Melvin Gordon or Sky Moore?
Ooh. Yeah, that's like it would depend on the construct of my team at that point. If I had if Gordon was going to be like my RB4 and Sky Moore was going to be my wide receiver 4, I probably would lean with Moore and go with that upside. But if I only have 2 running backs at that point and I still need my 3rd running back and I can get Melvin Gordon that late, I'm going to go with Gordon.
Okay, so these are all players and they're similar ADP. I'm going to put it inside the chat for everybody to click on. They can take a look at that ADP tool. That's going to be over at Full Time Fantasy. That tool is going to be free through August. It will be a premium subscription at Full Time if you do not have one. There's going to be a ton of tools coming out. I cannot share exactly what they are right now, but in the near future, a lot more tools that are going to be dedicated to the draft boards and to your draft rooms. And this tool is invaluable. This is what I use when I draft. I take a look at it, see where players are going, look and see how I can get a discount. On that tool, it gives you their most recent top 10 drafts. newest to the left, oldest to the right. You can kind of see a range in which they have gone, right? So Sky Moore, for instance, in the most recent draft, he just went at pick 115. Prior to that, he went 96th, 82nd, 96th, 103rd, 96th, 96th, 115.
Somebody got a nice bargain about 20 picks later.
Yep, somebody got a nice bargain there. So he's averaging at pick 98, wide receiver 50 off the board. But that tool you can utilize in your draft rooms as well. David Bell, oh man, everybody knows I love me some David Bell. I was watching tape and fell in love with this kid. I was looking at it and said, you know what? He's not extremely fast. He's not, exceptionally quick, but he always just seems to be in the right place at the right time. He has a great read on defenses. He's got really good feet, right? And you look back and say, what other wide receivers in time have been maybe slower than average, maybe haven't been the quickest, but have really good footwork, right? One name comes to mind. I'm not saying he's Jerry Rice, but when I watch tape and I look at him, he seems to be always just a step ahead of people, even though he's not fast. He always seems to be just in the right area. He always seems to know where to run to. He always seems to know where his feet need to be, and that you cannot teach. Right. Early reports out of camp have indicated that he's taken the most of all of his snaps so far in the summer, which is a great sign for his fantasy outlook. They said that most of his slots or his time has been in the slot. Fantastic for fantasy, but he's not your typical slot receiver. I mean, he's got, in terms of size and speed, like he's bigger, but he also makes circus-like catches, and he's been doing it in minicamp. You see him just climbing the ladder in the back of the end zone. I mean, he's been just impressing day after day after day inside of camp. I think he's going to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. The quarterback is going to be the only concern. What's going to happen to the quarterback position? That being said, though, he's going off the board as pick number 142. Wide receiver 67. Sign me up all day.
Yeah, that's late enough where there's pretty much no downside here. But the key, like you just said, was a David Bell as that big slot role. Really, really interesting with Deshaun Watson under center, but it's starting to basically look like Watson's not going to play this year. So David Bell in that big slot role with Jacoby Brissett, you're going to enter with a little bit more trepidation. And that's, of course, that goes for the entire Cleveland offense. That's why I've been avoiding Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is the kind of guy that I walk away from a lot of drafts with all these years because he was just such a consistent force at commanding targets, and you just would plug him in as your wide receiver 2, or if you got lucky, you just plug him as your wide receiver 3. You didn't have to worry about it. But with Jacoby Brissett, he was clearly, if you want to look at it, he was clearly a big downgrade when he was playing for Miami last year over Tua. And I think overall it's going to be a big downgrade for the Browns if he's in. I'm interested in Bell because you said his ADP, he's way, way down there. So, I mean, at that point, you're in the, 12th, 13th round? Or is it even lower than that?
Sign me up.
Yeah.
A little bit lower, 150. Oh, yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, 142. So that's you're hit the hammer on the nail. All right, last couple players we have. Talk to me about Dotson.
Yeah, so Dotson, if anything, we all during the draft were a little surprised. I think that Dotson, we all kind of had him mocked as a guy probably that was going to be in that maybe 30 to 40 range. I thought, more likely than not, he's going to be the top of the second, but he went 16th overall, which was, kind of a surprise to a lot of us. But he, if anything, of all the rookie receivers, he's probably gotten the most positive press and the most accolades of all these guys right now. He's really, really turned heads in Washington. Commanders wide receiver coach Drew Terrell said he, quote, could not find negative plays in Dotson's college film. And while a report from the team's in-house reporter also called Dotson electric, Carson Wentz himself, who, we may not want to look at this, but he actually is probably the pretty significant upgrade for Washington at quarterback. Wentz himself called Dotson awesome and praised his route running. He praised his work ethic. These are all really, really good signs. Granted, some of the extra work he's gotten was because Terry McLaurin has been out of camp while he was worried about the deal. But lo and behold, that's behind us now. So it'll be really, really interesting once McLaurin's back on the field, if that rapport that Wentz and Dotson had continues to carry over, if they make an extra effort to build reps with McLaurin, who's clearly going to be the number one. But again, his FFWC ADP is 114 at wide receiver 58. And with all the accolades he's getting so far, I'm a lot more interested in Dotson right now than I have been before. I mean, what are you seeing in your FFWC drafts?
I'm on the fence. Like Curtis Samuel's back. I mean, it helps that Logan Thomas is.
And I do like me some Curtis Samuel. I have him in so many leagues.
Yeah, and Curtis Samuel's electric. I mean, when he's on the field and he's healthy, it's going to be hard for Dotson to compete for those snaps. But not having Logan Thomas in the field and being down a tight end might force them into more 3 wide receiver sets. So I think there's definitely a lot of playing time heading Dotson's way, but just how much and how they're going to utilize him. They still have J.D. McKissick here, who's a pass catcher. Gibson can also catch the ball out of the backfield. I'm just not quite sure exactly what his role is going to be. I think it's going to be pretty limited to start the season, maybe more of a second half candidate to kind of break out. And we all know if Curtis Samuel gets hurt, which is definitely within the realm of possibilities on a week-to-week basis, Dotson, I think, is going to start seeing an uptick in his fantasy stock. Last player of the day, George Pickens. I had George Pickens mocked at the end of the round 1. Didn't happen in the NFL draft, but
yeah, hey, I'm gonna tell you what. Nobody that I'm aware of in the Twitter space was as high on Pickens as you. And if he turns out to be something, and he's got a decent shot here. Well, I know you want to talk about it, but we'll make sure that.
He's electric. He really is. Like, I still go back and watch his tape, and I loved it. And you look at reports coming out, per Justin Felder's Fox Sports, that he's making quote jaw-dropping catches are apparently routine for George Pickens. We also hear he's been the deep threat and go-to in camp, where he's been climbing the ladder for big plays week after week, day after day. We all know George Pickens is talented. That's not ever been the scenario or question at all. It's off the field issue concerns. How is he going to put it together? We have Trubisky at helm here for the Steelers. He's competing against, Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. So how much of a role is he going to have year 1 is to be seen. But if he is making jaw-dropping catches, quote unquote, per day, it's going to be hard not to see him on the field. Especially, we all know Steelers like to throw the ball. So how much with Trubisky, we shall see. But I would expect them, with the draft capital invested in George Pickens, that they're going to use him. He's going off the board right now as pick 157 in the FFWC. Wide receiver 73 off the board. I like the upside. I like the cost associated with the pick. I've been selecting him regularly in drafts as a late dart throw at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, and you see a lot of criticism of Trubisky for Pittsburgh, who I anticipate, probably being their starter throughout most of the season. But is he really that much of a downgrade over what Ben Roethlisberger was able to do last year? Because Roethlisberger, about the only thing Roethlisberger was good at last year was getting rid of the ball quickly, and that even comes with a caveat that he had never had time. So it's not like he was intentionally or excelling at getting rid of the ball quickly as the anti-Deshaun Watson. No, it was a product of that offensive line was concerned. Another thing to think of, interestingly, with Pickens has been Pittsburgh's recent history of not re-signing their wide receivers to these lucrative contracts and just kind of letting them walk. If that's the case, then Deontay, this could be the final season for him. So how does, could that anticipate how much they want to get Pickens on the field, even as a rookie, if he shows that he's able to hang with the pros? And it looks like right now, I mean, he looks like a pretty good bet to start in 3 wide sets. So, I mean, will they go out of their way to say, hey, let's get the kid more playing time because we're really going to have to rely on him and Chase starting in 2023?
Yeah, it's looking more and more likely that Deontay Johnson may not re-sign. It's also a possibility down the future that Claypool may not re-sign. George Pickens could find himself in a wide receiver 1 role earlier rather than later for the Steelers. But in redraft right now in 2022, he's definitely worth the upside with late dart throw in your drafts as pick 157 off the board. Well, we did have a couple questions. We had one guy who was asking here. Jared was asking anything about Jalen Tolbert. Unfortunately, not tonight. So we are nearing the end of the show this evening. Jalen Tolbert will be in next week's show as we go through the next set of rookie minicamp reviews and first impressions in camp. So if you want to see Jalen Tolbert, tune in then. Also, if you would like to join the FF Expo for free, or at least the ticket to the FF Expo, I have a Twitter post out there at FF Museo. Reshare that Twitter post. Subscribe to YouTube. If you already subscribed, you're done on that part, right? So make sure you're following the Full-Time Fantasy channel. Make sure you're on Twitter. Make sure you're following the FFWC account on Twitter. And then on the 8th, that's going to be next Friday, we're going to be giving away that ticket to the FF Expo. It's a $75 value. It is free for the person that is going to be selected. It is on you to get to the event, but $75 free entry to the event.
That's all inclusive pass. Come hang with me and Billy, and maybe we'll come up with another little special prize for you too.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of people at this thing. You know, you see a lot of big names. All the SiriusXM guys are out there. You get Mike Clay's out there. You know, there's so many good people in the industry that are out there, and it's just amazing to be able to hang out with everybody, have a cocktail with them, have a beer. I mean, Bob Lung does an outstanding job with this event, and we're going to have a table set up there. We're going to be doing, like I said earlier, giving away a free entry into the Mock Draft World Championship, which is going to be some really good prizes. So we'll see you then. Stay tuned, everyone. We will be back next week. We'll see you then. Have a good night, and thanks for tuning in to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast.